Okay, going to get started. Thanks everyone for coming along. My name's Emma and I'm facilitating this evening's event on behalf of South Dublin County Council, the Libraries, Noise and Contact Studio. This evening's talk is Thinking Outside the Lens, Careers in Film and Animation. We have 3 speakers along this evening. I'll briefly introduce them now and then they'll be coming up to speak to you. So Aoibhinn O'Sullivan of Distilled Ideas, she's a filmmaker, an award-winning documentary filmmaker. We have Phil McDarby, who's a bit of a jack of all trades. He's a photographer, animation. He's currently working for Brown Bag Films, and I think he's done web design and a bit of everything. We have Anne-Marie Naughton. Also, she's a producer, and she's here to speak to us this evening as well. So I'm going to run through how the format of this evening works. I know some of you were here last week, so I know you know how it works. Sorry for this part. So each speaker is going to come up and they're going to talk for about 10 minutes. After each talk, we're going to go to a panel discussion over here, which I will lead. During this time, you get a chance to ask any questions that you have. You notice that there's a question slip left on your seat when you came in. This is for while the speakers are talking. If you want to take note of any questions you have or any comments you'd like to make, and then while we're getting ready and set up for the panel discussion, you can hand these to Tori, who'll be going around to pick them up. So that's just basically if you have any questions. If you don't have a pen, maybe raise your hand and we can give you a pen if you'd like one. Okay, there's a few pens needed in the front. And we'll try to finish about 10-15 minutes early. The event is running until 7 o'clock. We'll try to finish about 10 minutes early. So if you want to get a chance to go and speak one-on-one to any of our speakers, you can get a chance at the end. Toilets are just around the corner if you need to go at any time. Also, during the last few minutes, we have tea and coffee and a few biscuits if you'd like any of those. So I'll just pass you over to Aoibhinn O'Sullivan to get started. Thanks.
Okay. So it's just the arrow keys.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. My name's Aoibhinn O'Sullivan. I'm a documentary filmmaker and a broadcast journalist, and I live and work here in Dublin. This is my production company, Distilled Ideas, and so we make web videos, podcasts, we take photos and make documentary films for a range of broadcasters, production companies, and often nowadays NGOs. So this is the company, and I've traveled around the world with a lot of these jobs. So it's really an interesting career to get into, and I'll just tell you how I started. I guess my interest in current affairs came from growing up in South Africa. Obviously, in the late 80s, apartheid was coming to an end, and so it was a really interesting place to be living. But particularly, my dad used to get the newspaper delivered every Sunday, and there's 4 kids in my family, and I'm quite a late owl. And so in the morning on a Sunday, I'd be the last one to get to the share of the papers. So all the comic book sections were gone, the kids section was gone, and the art section was gone. So all that was left was the finance and current affairs sections of the newspaper. And so I started reading those every Sunday, and from there I started watching the news and documentary programs. And I started to wonder if I could actually become a journalist myself. So I got my first press pass when I was 18 years old. A friend of mine and I made our own press passes and went to loads of gigs on the lie that we were reviewing bands. But eventually I did start writing reviews of bands and arts events, and started covering them for the newspaper in Durban, the city that I grew up in. So I started to get published in newspapers, and started to move more towards getting feature articles and things like that in the paper. And I wanted to learn how to take photos to enhance my stories. So at the time I couldn't afford a photography course. So I got books out the library and borrowed friends' cameras and just started to try and teach myself photography. Eventually I saved up and bought my own stills camera. But I just want to explain that to you, that you don't necessarily have to go onto a college. There's a lot of information out there if you can't, or if now isn't the right time for you to go and study. I wanted to move on to do video filmmaking, but at the time I was studying politics and philosophy at university. And initially, I'll be honest with you, I thought that I'd made the wrong decision because my course was so theory-based, and all my friends who'd chosen design, who'd chosen journalism and filmmaking as their courses to study, they were already learning all these tools and were going to graduate with these skills. And I had all this theory, I was just analyzing papers and policies and things like that. But looking back now, I'm really glad that I did do politics and philosophy because it's taught me so much. It's given me a really good foundation in terms of international politics and taught me how to analyze stories, which I think helps a lot because there's a lot of PR that comes from, you know, in press releases and things like that. So it teaches you how to read between the lines and things like that. So I came to Dublin in 2000 to do a video course in 2001, and I studied at Griffith College. They had a really intensive practical one-year video course, and I chose to come to Ireland instead of doing it in South Africa because at the time, you know, digital video is changing so fast. Well, video production is changing so fast. So at the time in South Africa, they were still using VHS in the colleges. And Griffith College had moved on to Final Cut Pro. So I learnt on this new non-linear editing software, which has become one of the industry standards, that and Avid. So I'm really glad that I did that. And the reason I came to Ireland was I was asking my friends in South Africa which courses to do. And I had said, oh, I could also go to Ireland because my parents live there. And they looked at the courses and what was being offered. And to me, I couldn't understand, you know, Final Cut Pro meant nothing to me, but a friend of mine said, go try and do that course because that's going to become really good software. And she worked in the industry at the time. So try and ask as many questions. If you know people who work in the field that you're interested in, definitely go out there and speak to them and try and get as much information as possible because it can save you a lot of time. The following year, I was a technician on the course and I could just borrow the cameras whenever I wanted to. So I got interested in Ireland's involvement in the war in Iraq, and I started following the plane spotters down there who were documenting the US military aircraft that was landing. And the footage that I shot that year eventually became part of a film that I made called 8 Things to Remember, which did quite well. So basically, with all of this, over the years, I've worked my way up from being like a runner, assistant camera, assistant sound, coffee and tea maker, to getting directing jobs. I get camera work now, and increasingly I'm doing a bit of everything. Like I go out on shoots, and especially the news stuff that I do. I've got a laptop on my back, and I shoot the news. I go and edit it, and I upload it straight away, and write the script, write the press release, and everything that accompanies it. So what are the things that I've learned along the way? Okay, firstly, this work is very coveted. A lot of people want to do it, and it's extremely competitive. So if you are wanting or interested in becoming a broadcast journalist or working in documentary film or filmmaking in general, I imagine, when you go to study it, take it seriously. Attend your classes. If you get an opportunity to go on shoots, get there early. Be positive on set. Stay late. Don't be expecting to leave at 5 o'clock and things like that, because producers have the pick of the crop when it comes to staff and talent and things like that. So you've got to make yourself indispensable and get people to know that you are reliable and that you're a nice, good person to work with, and it'll reap the rewards in the end, and you'll get more work. Another not so good side is the financial rewards are pretty difficult, especially when you first start out. The jobs can be few and far between. In fact, I would say that full-time jobs in broadcast journalism and documentary filmmaking are pretty rare, if non-existent. Most people I know work project to project, and it's really great if you can kind of monkey swing from project to project. But when you first start out, and even now, you can get gaps where a project's finished, there isn't anything confirmed on the horizon, and rent is due and bills are due. So it's quite a precarious career, especially when you're starting out. So I know when I left college, that was the first major cull that happened. The people who graduated with me, people who had heavy financial responsibilities, people who had kids, things like that. It's just quite difficult. If you need a regular monthly salary, it's quite tough. So for those of you that are wanting to get into this, if you have that opportunity where you don't, you can live cheaply, that's the time when you should be volunteering to go on other people's shoots and pick up and learn from other people. And you can move on from there. On the plus side, though, the film crews that I've worked with, people that I studied with that stayed in video, have really made a career of it for themselves. And film crews and the sets, the places that you get to go to, are fascinating. You get to see a whole lot of different worlds, and you get access to loads of places that general members of the public don't get access to. So it's a really inspiring career, and work doesn't feel like work. When you're out shooting and editing and stuff, I really enjoy it. Another thing that I've learned is that there's stories everywhere. Every person has got stuff going on in their lives that is interesting, and when you arrive somewhere with a camera, you're in a very privileged space that people invite you into their lives and tell you things and allow you to listen and record aspects of their lives and allow you to retell it for them. So it's really amazing, and it makes you learn so much from other people, and you get to actually think that when you're walking past people on the street, you have no idea actually what's going on in people's lives, because unless you really get to sit down and talk to them, you don't know the struggles or the joys that they have going on in their lives at the moment. Like, all of our lives are so full of drama. So one final thing that I've learned is that this is a really amazing time to be making films. For all of us who, if you think 20 years ago, all this equipment the cameras cost tens of thousands of pounds sterling. If you wanted to edit, you'd have to book expensive time in a studio, an editing studio, pay an editor to work for you. And so productions, there were very few people who actually had access to these tools. Nowadays, a good broadcast camera can cost you a couple of grand. You can buy editing software and do it on your laptop. And so it's really democratized the media. And if for us who are out there, we're finally getting to also tell the stories. So in our parents' generation, it was a read-only culture. So they would sit and watch the TV and get fed the news. They would read the newspaper and take in the news that way. Whereas for us nowadays, it's a read-write culture. So news happens and people comment on it. People shoot news stories on their mobile phones and feed in photos and stuff to news organizations. And if you make a film, there's a platform there, the internet. And so people can see it. You don't need to book an expensive theater somewhere to get it seen. So I think video, especially with bandwidths increasing the way that they are, it's going to become a really amazing tool to learn. So if you can learn how to do camera work and editing, it's going to really skill you up for the future. So that's my...
Thanks to Aveen, and now I'm going to invite Philip to talk to you about his various different careers.
What is it, just the arrow, is it?
Yes, just the arrow.
How's it going, everybody? I suppose I'm here to talk about animation, digital art in general. It's sort of slightly different to what Aoibhinn was talking about. this is a bit of a long and winding road, so I hope you bear with me. I started my career probably 14 years ago. I did my Leaving Cert in '92, and for those of you who are doing it, I had no clue, zero clue what I wanted to do when I was filling out my CAO form. Made some pretty terrible decisions, got a good enough Leaving Cert, terrible decisions, dropped out, ended up stacking shelves in Quinsworth for 9 months. It was ugly, you know, and ended up choosing an arts degree because I just didn't really know what else to pick. So ran away to Australia for a year, came back, and at the time, this was kind of 97, 98, the internet was kind of just taking off and there was web design courses popping up. So I ended up going to Sallynoggin to do a web design course. So this is kind of where I've gone from and to, from graphic design and web design through to 3D, into animation, back out to mobile phone graphics, into advertising briefly, photography all the way along, and finally matte painting. So, as I say, it's a long and winding road, so please don't take me as some sort of poster boy as to how to get into this thing, because it took me quite a long time to end up where I really, really wanted to be, but not that I haven't enjoyed the journey. So, the first time I opened Photoshop, I was about 22, and a penny dropped, just literally a bell went off, and I started mucking around doing these sort of awful paintings. It's kind of embarrassing showing that, but it was, at the time, I'd sort of spent my life writing and reading science fiction and fantasy and all this kind of geeky stuff, and there was all sorts of mad imagery in my head, and Photoshop sort of suddenly allowed me to get this stuff out of my head, and it's an amazing program. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. After Photoshop, I went and did an internship through the course I was doing in Sallynoggin, and a guy handed me a copy of Bryce 3D, which is like a really rudimentary 3D modeler and renderer. But again, it was just like a door opening in my mind. It's like a landscape generator that you can kind of create mountains and water and all that kind of stuff, model rudimentary shapes using spheres and cubes and all that kind of thing. And again, I sort of indulged my inner geek and sort of created cities and spaceships and creatures and all this kind of stuff that I'd always kind of written about, and I was kind of fascinated with. I kind of went on, learned Maya as the years went by, which is a much more sort of advanced program. I could do sort of organic modelling and much bigger scale scenes and stuff like that. So this was kind of the beginning. This was where I was starting to realise that the digital medium, I sort of came from ink and watercolour and pencil, but the digital medium is so liberating, it's so freeing, you know, like in Photoshop, I can have 100 layers in an image, all separate. I can use what's called the history stack to go back 5 hours if I don't like where I've gone. So obviously, you know, watercolor's a beautiful medium, but I just didn't have the patience. I needed the freedom to kind of go down different roads and explore imagery. I got a job in a web design company in '98 called Segasoft, which was kind of a subsidiary of Sega at the time, and we developed lots and lots of stuff. Thankfully, I don't have any of the examples of my early web design because, folks, the internet was an ugly place in 1998, and none of these sites exist anymore. But this was something that a friend of mine, Dara McDonald, and I worked on, and it was Loudmouths, which was a real-time chat software. It was Skype, basically, in 1998. I can't take any credit for the technical wizardry, but this is an example of using 3D to build sort of interfaces. Unfortunately, Loudmouths never saw the light of day. They sold it, and the company they sold it to went under, so Dara probably cries himself to sleep over that. But I went from Segasoft to a place called Media Lab Europe, where I really sort of got into 3D in earnest. I got into animation, rigging, lighting, all that kind of stuff. And in Media Lab, what we did, and this is sort of fairly where it gets a little bit wacky, we started using biometrics as interface controllers. So we started using breath and brain waves and heart rate and what's called galvanic skin response, which is the conductivity of your skin, telling whether you're stressing or relaxing. And this game, for example, is Mind Balance, where we designed this thing called Cerberus, which is basically a brain interface that sits on your head and sensors make contact with your skin. These flashed at different hertz, 60 and 80 hertz, and this creature walked across and he tilted, and to straighten him you had to stare at this, and we could pick that up wirelessly through Cerberus, through this brain interface, which triggered an animation to make him walk straight again, and vice versa. So it was really the first of its kind, this wireless brain interface. The kind of philosophy behind what we were doing in Media Lab was trying to use digital technology and video game technology specifically to kind of help in rehabilitation. You know, people who are handicapped or paraplegic or locked in, who don't really have the opportunity to experience these kind of immersive worlds, and looking at how that could help them and all the rest. And we had some sort of fantastic results. The other big one was a game called Relax to Win, which was a sort of racing game where you you had two sensors strapped to your fingers, and they read your what's called your electrodermal activity or your galvanic skin response, which tells whether you're stressing or relaxing, kind of fight or flight mechanism, very similar to a lie detector. Your characters walk, run and fly, and as you relax they start to run, as you relax further they start to fly, so it's a very sort of counterintuitive game. But this is kind of, just to bring it back to theme, this is all getting deep into animation, deep into rigging and all the rest. Again, fairly rudimentary at the time, 2001, you know, real-time graphic engines weren't as powerful as they are today, obviously. When I finished in Media Lab, we went looking for, am I doing okay for time?
Oh,
Yeah. When we finished in Media Lab, we went looking for work in Dublin in computer games, and there was really very little. So we said, to hell with it, we'll set up on our own, and we got a grant from from Enterprise Ireland, a feasibility study, and we started doing mobile phone games, because this was sort of around 2004. Handsets were starting to, the GPUs, the graphic processors, were starting to kind of get, you could kind of use them, you know, to generate sort of fairly arresting content at the time, and it's incredibly rudimentary looking at it now. But this was my own personal hell, because as you'll see from the later stuff, pixel art is so limiting. It was just like, I mean, these characters were 16 pixels across. It was completely soul destroying. I would regularly cry myself to sleep. But and the irony of having created a company that I did this for was not lost on me, trust me. But basically, after that, we decided to kind of go back into biometrics, and I designed this device called the PIP, or the Personal Input Pod, which again is an electrodermal activity sensor. You hold it between your fingertips. We come up with this really, really highly conductive metal that doesn't tarnish, and it sends that information over Bluetooth to a phone or a PC or a PlayStation or whatever. It was a kind of multimodal interface, and we started at that stage. We got an angel investor involved, and we kind of signed a big deal, and we ended up getting a load of employees and all that kind of stuff. We went back to Relax to Win, and we did it for the mobile phones. This was a game called Storm Chaser, which the middle one, which when you relaxed, you chased away all the rain and the lightning and the wind and all the rest. And this one on the end here was going to be very controversial and seriously worried me. Actually, it was called Lie Detective, which was an actual polygraph. But we kind of said it was for fun, but I could see a lot of marriages ending due to Lie Detective, to be honest with you. I was genuinely worried about that going out there. But anyway, the sad story is in 2008, the arse fell out of the world, if you'll forgive the French, and the recession got us, and our investor went out of business, unfortunately. But anyway, before that happened, I got my dream and I went back to full resolution. I kind of came up with this idea called the Loom, which it was living paintings. So these were these huge canvases that would adapt and evolve according to your relaxation or stress level. So this is called New Life, and it started as a kind of arid, frozen landscape, and as you relaxed, that everything would thaw in stages, and there'd be kind of animations and stuff, and you end up with this really big, lush scene at the end of about a 15-minute session. I also wrote the music, which was kind of an adaptive 6 or 7 layer piece of music that gradually deepened and became sort of richer with strings and counter melodies and stuff the more you relax. So the idea behind this again was to kind of harness the sort of the power of the GPUs that were available. But unfortunately, none of this saw the light of day, which was a bit sad. But you know, it was sort of 5 years of our lives. But it was, you know, we did a lot. We learned a lot, and we did a lot of good things that we're proud of. But and there's sort of embers still in the fire that something may still come of it. So after that, I was kind of, as you can imagine, I was kind of heartbroken a little bit, and I'd sort of been creative director of my own company. I couldn't really face the prospect of going and working for somebody else, so I wanted to go freelance for a while and see how I did. I have a wife and 2 kids at home, so it was a little bit of a hairy prospect and a bit of a dodgy time. But in the background of all this stuff, I was getting involved in what's called matte painting. Matte painting traditionally in the old days would have been painting on glass, as you guys probably know, set extensions for the likes of Gone with the Wind and stuff. As the technology has developed, it's now kind of recognised it's a combination of photography and painting. And I'm big into photography. I do a lot of sort of forest photography and stuff. So I started getting into matte painting, and that was hugely liberating. Again, kind of combining 3D with photography with painting. At some mad stage in 2009, these little creatures appeared in my head, these tiny little wood dragons who kind of live in our forests, and I started sort of coming up with this world for kids, this sort of almost a sort of document, a field guide, an anthropological field guide to kind of reignite kids' interest in the magic of the wood and all that kind of stuff. And this is another example. Just to kind of give you an example of how torturous pixel art was for me. This is 17,000 pixels across, so that's the type of resolution I love to work in. If you look at that little fire fairy there, that's her full resolution. So that's how I actually painted her, because I just love detail. I love putting in detail. It's sort of borderline OCD, to be honest with you. I put in stuff that nobody's ever going to see. But anyway, so using this kind of skill set, this kind of I suppose color grading, light matching, compositing, all this kind of stuff in Photoshop, combining photography with painting, I realised that it's a kind of fairly useful skill set to have in advertising. So I started getting into advertising, and to be honest with you, no offence to anybody who's involved, it's a little bit of a soul-destroying sort of sphere, and I found it sort of fairly creatively negative as an experience, but this was one of the ones that was quite nice. I shot the background plate for Dundrum Shopping Centre and kind of built it up over a couple of hundred layers. So all through this I was doing forest photography, which was feeding into the Wood Dragon work and all that kind of stuff. And I got a call in February 2011 from Brown Bag looking for a freelancer to come in for 4 weeks. And my job was, and you couldn't write this, was to come in and basically paint forests for a children's show and come up with an aesthetic, come up with a kind of look and feel for a really top secret show they were working on at the time, which is Peter Rabbit, which has just been announced. And we've been working away on it. Some of the lads have been working on it for 3 or 4 years. I've been on it about 1.5 years. And this shot here is an example of a matte painting that's used in the show. It's part of the opening titles. But there'd be kind of a 3D environment in front of this. So this would be a matte painting background, almost like a theatre backdrop. That's kind of one of the things that I do, hundreds and hundreds of matte paintings at this stage. So this would have started out from photographic reference that I would have taken in the Lake District when I went there this year, and just basically painted from reference, referring to all these photos. This is an example of an exterior set from the show. Again, massive resolution, so the camera can kind of really get close in here. That would kind of be full frame on the telly, so the characters you can get right in on the characters. So huge resolution. That's a hilltop over on the right, which is Beatrix Potter's house. We wanted to kind of get it in as a tribute to her. So that's where I've ended up, folks. As you can see, it's been a bit of a long and winding road through all sorts of weird and wonderful places, but that's how I've ended up where I am. So.
Thanks, Phil. And now I'll bring up our last speaker, Anne-Marie. Thanks. It's just the hour piece.
Hi everyone. So my name is Anne-Marie. I'll just move to the next. I have a small production company called Park Films. So I'll just show you the route I took. Sorry, I didn't know the order of these slides. That's my fault. So first off, I'm a producer, and the producer is involved. The producer is responsible to get the whole thing going, from the original idea, from concept, the script. It depends. It could be a number of different ways. A director could approach you, or you could have people in the company who you worked very well together, or you've been nurturing for a while. So there's a number of different ways to get the idea out there. So so it's about surrounding the talent, and usually it's very important that people get on well together, and that usually works very well for a working relationship. So just to explain, so this isn't me, I'm not an Oscar winner. Sorry, I wish I was, but I'm not. That's the plan, but I'm not there yet. So how I started, I actually did marketing in college. And after that, my real dream, I wanted to be a chef. So I became a chef, and I set up a restaurant in Clifton, and I travelled all over the world, and it was a dream, and I adored it. And after about 7 or 8 years, I got totally burnt out. It was really hard work, way too much drink, way too much, just really long days, and I kind of just had a change of heart. Came home from travelling around the world and settled in Dublin and decided I needed a new career. So had always adored films, storytelling, all of that, so it was something I wanted to get into, but I just didn't know how to. I was 26, so I felt I was too old to go to college for it, whereas I probably would have chosen to if I had been younger, but I decided I wanted to get practical experience and kind of rush into getting somewhere on it. So I worked on an ad through a friend of mine. I had no idea what I wanted to be, what area, what angle. So I worked on an ad and immediately decided on 2 days on the ad that I wanted to be behind the camera, but I didn't want to be a director. I didn't want to be a camera person. I didn't want to be a designer. And I decided then and there I'd like to be a producer, or at least start getting things going, or work behind the scenes in the development part of things. So there's a man called Noel Pearson, he's the Oscar winner, who had a very successful production company. So I kind of mooched around a little bit, found somebody who knew him, someone else who knew him, and suddenly got a cup of tea with them in Neary's pub and asked him could I work for him. So he brought me on a trial for a couple of weeks, and I ended up staying there for 5 years. So it was there that I honed my skill and kind of copied everything he did, bled him dry, hounded him constantly just for all the information on how it all works. It was a great production company. He was quite hands-off, so when he wasn't looking, I was making shorts in the office, I was doing all sorts of things. And together we made, while I was there, halfway through, we made a film called Tara Road, which we shot in South Africa, which was quite a big budget. One of the main things I learned from him was it's a product and it's all saleable. So you have to have something attractive to be able to raise the money. The source material here was Maeve Binchy, which was a name worldwide, so that really helped things. Andy McDowell meant, America. There was an immediate audience in America. Then, people like Stephen Ray meant Irish money could come in. So the idea for this film, the idea on paper was great. It raised a big budget, and then it's about finding an audience. So not only are you trying to find stories and scripts to make and attach directors, but essentially it's all about the audience at the end of the day. You could go through all this trouble and make this and spend years on the script, but it's about honing the audience. So that comes cast and the story and all of that helps with that. So after 5 years with that company, I decided to go out on my own because I kind of felt there was other Maeve Binchy stuff and those kind of writers that we were working on, that I wanted to do something a little different. So I left, I set up a company, and I made some short films. I think I made about 7 or 8 short films. And always working with directors I liked, and the end road for shorts is really, they work better for the director. Nobody really cares about the producer. The director gets all the awards and the accolades and all of that, but for the producer, it's about nurturing talent. So, if you work well in a short and you nurture that talent, more often than not, if you get on and you have a good relationship, you'll go on to do a feature together. So that's kind of the end, the aim. So then I was really interested in Flann O'Brien material. He was my uncle, and I knew I could get access to the material. So I started making some Flann O'Brien short films, and I made a couple of short films, and I did a comedy show, which I'll get to in a moment. But just to go back to source material, the idea can stem from anywhere. It can be articles, books, foreign films, TV movies, comic books, it could be a friend, it could be anything. So it all starts with the idea, and it has to be a really strong, compelling, dramatic idea for you to start with, because it's a really long road to develop the idea, to hire everybody, and to get all the money. So you have to be really passionate about the idea. I'm not sure, if there's an area that you're not interested in, like I'm not really interested in war stories or sci-fi, so generally I stay away from that because I'm just probably not going to get it off the ground if it doesn't interest me that much. So I try and stick to the things that kind of work for me. Then on the Flann O'Brien thing, I did have all the material, but the books are so funny when you're sitting up in your bed reading them, but I was really afraid to take one of the big stories and do a feature film because I just thought, where was the audience and how would it transfer to film? So with a bit of work, we decided to put something on stage, and the idea originally was with comedians and Flann O'Brien's material and their take on it, and we wanted to get Dylan Moran and Tommy Tiernan, or Dylan Moran and Billy Connolly. So it turns out we didn't get them in the end, so we went ahead with kind of local talent, and that worked for the material. So I suppose the example here is just being open to, you know, changing things and making something different and seeing what else is out there and reworking things rather than shelving it or not doing it. And then we took that material and we turned it into a DVD, and we sold quite well actually outside Ireland, because there's a lot of Flann O'Brien fans. So the main requirements, I think, for producing are perseverance, passion, faith, and it really is quite hard work, but it's really rewarding. At the end of the day, it could be 3 years, 5 years, 2 years. I mean, some Hollywood feature films are in development for 10 years. But at the end of the day, when you see it on the screen, it really, really does pay off. So I think that's what helps people keep going. You know, if there's no money left in the bank and there's no cash flow, you know, and you get out there and you keep trying, I think once you see it at the end, it does kind of pay off. Then I did a feature film with another company, and it was really low budget, really hard work, a fantastic director, and we put our absolute heart and soul into it, and we released it. We got a cinema release and we released it on 18 screens in Ireland. But I mean, I learned so much about that. I mean, there's absolutely nobody in it, so it's really hard to get Irish people to go to the cinema to see some of the Irish movies with big names. So we came along and put absolutely everything into this, and there was not one star in it. So if you can imagine, you're writing the press release and you're trying to get the audience to go. So you've, like a product again, what is the saleable element? And the director wasn't well known, and so that was probably 1.5 or 2 years of my life working on that. It was amazing. It was a great experience, great nurturing the talent with the director, and we were looking at doing something else, but not much reward, or, you know, not much monetary reward especially, and we had both quite a, you know, put a bit into it. So that was a lesson there. So hot cast, hot director. I mean, life, if I had Penelope Cruz or Bruce Willis, I would like be doing backflips up here. It would just, the films would be funded, everybody would want to see them, be an amazing story, I'd have an automatic audience. But, you know, in independent world and little Ireland, and we're a small territory, it doesn't really work like that, so we kind of have to keep struggling. But again, like a product, you know, the key is trying to get a recognisable name, and that's where all the money comes from. So it kind of goes around in a big circle. You can't get the cast until you have the money, and you can't get the money until everybody wants to know who's in it. So then I made another low budget feature, again with nobody in it, but really strong director with an incredibly distinctive voice, but a really hard sell because it's just hugely art house. And art house films are really important, and there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of people who want to see them, and there's a lot of specific festivals for them. But mainstream audiences, they don't, you know, they're not really, that's not really the audience. So again, an awful lot of work, and really great to work with the director, and again, we're doing something as well. But after this, I decided I didn't want to do art house. So then I did another film called Tin Can Man with the exact same director. This isn't art house, it's more extreme cinema, which is something totally different. Again, tiny audience, but did really, really well in festivals. And I think I did this, we made this for very, very little money. I did this because the director and I were forming a very strong bond and relationship, and he's a huge talent. So I kind of did this because I believed in him. And that led us on to, we're now in development of a much bigger budget feature film. It's a horror, and all going well, we're aiming to go into production in November, and it's the same director. So that was a particular path. And these are just some visual references from the horror film that we're hoping to shoot start next month. So that was the road I went. I mean, again, it was more, went straight in for the practical things, but kind of focused on feature films, did the shorts first, met with some directors, opened the pool of contacts and who I know, and then tried to move into feature films. So that's where I'm really trying to concentrate on now. These are the stages of a feature film, of making one. You start with development. That could go on for 2 years, 3 years, 1.5 years, and it's generally script development. So once you get your story, be it an article, or you buy the rights of a book, or wherever the story comes from, you have to turn that into a screenplay, a saleable story and script that you can raise money on and get cast on. So that could be 10 drafts, 5 drafts, it could be 3 writers. Screenwriting is such a craft, it has to be honed over a length of time, and a writer could take 2 months over a script, he could take 3 months. Then, all going well, if your script is amazing, which it has to be because it's such a, it's so competitive out there, you go into pre-production. Pre-production is when all the team come together. It's such a collaborative process that a film is not just made by a director. There's a designer, an editor, a costume designer, there's a whole heads of department, and all departments work together for about 6 to 8 weeks in pre-production. Getting the look and the design and organising the whole film. And then production is the shoot, which can be, depending on how much money you have, from 5 to 8 weeks. All highly pressurised, all still trying to finalise the pieces of the money, but the directors don't really, you hide a lot of that from the directors. They just are on the floor shooting, which is a good way to leave them getting creative. And then post-production is all the editing. And then distribution is the important part of getting it seen. So again, if you've got a good cast or a good director, it's easier to get it out there for your audience. So finally, it's a business like anything else. It has its ups and downs. It is hard work, but there's huge rewards. And if it's something you really want to do, it's probably important to decide. I mean, producers have to be creative, but it's a very different type of creative than a screenwriter. I mean, they have to be creative in knowing a good story, knowing a good film, being able to read and assess scripts. But it's a little bit different than a director or an editor or a writer. And I just found working on the ad for the few days, actually I think it was a week I worked on the ad for first, just let me see how it all worked, every single department, and that helped me decide, what interested me. And the other thing we do in the company as well is we always take interns. So I think it's a great idea to intern try and go for smaller companies rather than big ones, because if you're going for smaller ones, you get to see so many different areas and exactly what happens. And people are really good about taking interns, because generally that's how everybody else in film started, through a favour. So people are really, really good to pay back and help people get into the business. And there's a quote from the fantastic filmmaker David Mamet. I always thought the real violence in Hollywood isn't what's on the screen, it's what you have to do to raise the money. And I would totally agree with that.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. So I'm just going to invite the speakers to come up and sit down and get settled, get some water, and then I'm going to ask Tori to collect the question sheet. So if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, Tori's going to walk around and pick them up. I briefly put together a few slides. We put together a few slides about third level courses. Matter of interest, how many people here are actually in college at the moment? Okay, so we kind of have enough actually. So sorry to the people that are in college, but I just thought it was useful just to highlight. I know a lot of you probably know about these courses, but I just thought I'd list them. I don't know a lot about a lot of these courses, I'm just listing them. So IADT would be one of the key colleges for a lot of photography, film, animation courses. So this is a list of the courses that they do. Their open day, they don't have, I haven't found the date, but it will be coming up.
The 23rd and 24th of November.
The 23rd and 24th of November. Definitely go to open days if you're interested in going to any of these colleges. It's the best way to find out about the courses and what the colleges are all about. Is anybody here from IUDT? No. Tala IT? Ballyfermot? Okay. So yeah, definitely if you're interested in IUDT, go along to the open day. Ballyfermot College of Further Education, so they have kind of mixed, they're probably most well known for their animation courses, but they also do digital media production.
Yeah, one of the animators from Ballyfermot actually worked on Avatar.
Oh, okay. And there's a lot, and they've like won Oscars and things like that for their films, like Brown Bag. A lot of animators come from Ballyfermot to Brown Bag, don't they? So those are just some of the courses in Ballyfermot. I think their open day's coming up in November. I don't think they have the date set. I was told the date isn't set yet. But definitely go along and check those out. DIT is scattered all over the place. So the School of Media, they have film and broadcasting and photography courses, but also in the art design and printing. If you're interested in visual communication and graphics and things like that, that's another way into these kind of industries. A lot of people would start in visual communication and go into animation. And then the National College of Art and Design, they don't have as much in the line of photography, film, animation, but they do have a media department in fine art. It's definitely more conceptual, but they do film, photography, everything like that, and visual communication. And then Tala IT, very close by here, they have a creative digital media course. So check out for all the open days. I know their open day I think is coming up on the 15th of November. NCAD has information sessions on their portfolio coming up on the 3rd, 6th and 7th of November, and their open days in December as well. So just keep an eye on the websites, and if you're interested in the courses, go along to the open days. So we'll start with the questions now. So if anybody has any questions from the floor. Anybody? Yep. Do you want to? Okay, so what animation software would you recommend?
Animation software. See, there's a little bit of a barrier to entry there, because a lot of the stuff that say we would use in Brown Bag is very expensive. Maya would be an industry standard. Avatar would have been done using Maya, all that kind of stuff. It's definitely the sort of go-to software package. But there's entry level packages like stuff like Bryce from Daz 3D would kind of you could dip your toe in the water. There are personal learning editions, PLEs, of most of the software you can get. Student versions, trial versions where you get to use the fully functional version of the program for a month. Stuff like that. There is a little bit of a barrier to entry, to be honest. I was lucky. I had a couple of friends working in the industry. I was able to get my hands on some software at an early stage, but yeah, there is a little bit of a barrier, to be honest.
You started off in Photoshop.
Yeah,
Would you
Photoshop.
recommend that people start off kind of with Photoshop?
Photoshop sits above everything, in terms of digital art. It really does. It brings it all together, and I can't recommend it highly enough. I live in it. I've lived in it for 14 years, so it's amazing. And go to adobe.com, download the month's free trial. It's the fully functional version. So, and there's absolutely tons on the web, tutorials, etc. So.
What do you think of 3D cinema? I suppose that's a question for everybody, really.
I love it. When I watched Avatar, that's the first 3D that I'd watched, and before it was maybe like 10 years before, and I couldn't believe how before, when I watched 3D, it was like looking in a fish tank. The 3D was behind a glass. And when I watched Avatar, I was so impressed the way stuff came out of the screen. So yeah, I think it's great. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I haven't watched a huge amount of it, but I think it's amazing how they do it and achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably the one you'd expect to say that I love it, but I have to say I have serious kind of reservations. Avatar blew me away. I've never experienced anything like it. It was like there was a window cut out of the screen. It was amazing. But to be honest with you, since then, we've had horrible, cynical cash-ins like Clash of the Titans, Retrofit 3D, which isn't 3D at all, cut out horrible nastiness just to
Can
just
they call it 3D? if it's
yeah,
not
absolutely,
3D?
yeah,
Really?
and just cashing in, you know, getting people through the doors. I think it's a, you know, this is a really brutal answer, but it's a horrendously cynical end of Hollywood, in my opinion. I think when it's done right, Prometheus, terrible film, beautiful 3D. Avatar, amazing. Coraline, Toy Story 3, amazing 3D. But when it's done badly and cynically, it's really sad. It really is, you know. So sorry.
What type of software did you use to combine photography and matte painting? Advice.
Photoshop
underlined.
again. Yeah.
Photoshop.
Yeah.
Sorry, these are all animation questions.
It's all
We'll
good,
get
go
on
for
to
it.
the other ones in a minute. Phil, did you have any experience with animation before going to art college?
I never went to art college. I've never studied art, so I'm a bit of a weirdo like that. I'm totally self-taught. So it's like I basically picked up Photoshop from a sort of friend in UCD at the time, and I learned it by going, I wonder what this button does. Literally, I mean, I just went in and sort of discovered filters and layers and all that kind of stuff, and so I don't want to sort of sound like a poor mouth, but my parents wouldn't have. I always drew and I always wrote these crazy stories and read these mad books, and I don't really think my parents knew what to make of me, to be honest with you. So they definitely wouldn't have encouraged me at that stage in my life. They wouldn't have encouraged me to go down this road, you know. So I kind of stubbornly just I just stuck with it and kind of taught myself. And what it all boils down to any of you who are interested in animation or interested in getting into this industry, it's all about your portfolio, all about your book, as we call it, what you can bring in and show people that you can do. Leaving cert results, college results, you know, absolutely study, get your head down, but what it boils down to is your book. It boils down to what you can do. I've never been asked about my degree. I've never been asked about my leaving cert results. So, you know, that's just, I hope that's not a sort of unpolitically correct thing to say, but it's just, I'm in a very visual medium, and that's what it's all about. What can you do? Show me.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going down that road, that's something to think about.
On that line, actually, I have a question here. Any advice that any of you would have for any students that are currently preparing a portfolio or just an application for any of the courses, be it film, photography or animation? Is there any advice that you'd have? You know, I don't know, like the film courses, do you have to have a portfolio for those? Presumably you do
For the
with
theory ones,
IIDT.
you don't. For the practical ones, you might.
Yeah, I think IIDT you have to have.
Yeah.
And if you haven't shot video before, at least examples of photographs that you've taken and things
Well,
like that.
what
So-
everyone says is just get out. You know, if you want to be a director or that kind of filmmaker or camera or that end of it, the creative end, you know, get out and shoot something on your phone
Yeah.
and maybe show them that in the application. If you have that to show, it means you can do something and you're a little bit creative. So rather than the best application and the most advanced text and, you know, something visual
Yeah.
would really, I think it would really help.
Yeah, and in terms of, you know, a lot of students will be preparing a general portfolio for a lot of the art colleges. So in terms of the kind of just the visual, the flat pieces of artwork that they'd put in their portfolio, would there be anything that you think colleges would be looking for, like storytelling or narrative or?
Don't think so. You know, it just depends what course they're going for. But definitely if it's a director's filmmaking course, that you want to be a filmmaker. So the only way to show that is to have shot something or even tell a 3-minute story. It doesn't even, can be the cheapest thing on the planet, but as long as you get across,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that you can tell a story of some level.
Yeah,
Um,
using moving pictures. I
yeah.
think would be, especially now that software, I mean, you can edit on Windows Media Player if you need to, and it's free. You know, there's all the software available. You don't have to use the high-end stuff just for your portfolio, but you should definitely have moving pictures and, you know, some kind of, like on a DVD, show what you
Yeah.
hope to do with
Exactly.
if you had tools and lighting and all that. It's to show the potential that
I
you
mean,
have.
they can see the leap of faith,
Yeah,
can't
of course.
they?
Yeah.
And if you can't edit or you're not technical or you don't have a Mac or you're not good on the computer, you know, you could find somebody who could do that end. You don't have to be perfect at every part, and you can draw and help, and you've just had some sort of vision.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword, like where you're looking at a lot of you're of a generation where it's completely different for you guys than it was for us. It's all so accessible now. The level, the playing field is totally level. Anybody can call themselves a photographer. You know, the equipment is there. Anybody can. My iPhone shoots HD video. That is just. I mean, it's science fiction stuff. If you stop to think about it, you go back 15 years. You know, there was no mobile phones. It's unbelievable the revolution that we're all part of. That you guys, and I don't mean anything bad by this, but you guys totally take for granted. I mean, my 5-year-old's with the iPad, zooming in on photos. You know, it's just unbelievable. So, but the problem with that is the ubiquity of the digital medium means that anybody can call themselves a photographer. Anybody can write a blog. So you have to try that extra bit harder to stick your head above, the water. And as the guys say, it's very true. Get out there, get shooting, get editing. It's all available. It's all free. I mean,
And the other good thing about college as well is you'll see with a lot of the really successful directors, it's the relationships they have. Like, I don't know if you know the film What Richard Did, that's just out.
Yeah.
So Lenny the director, Stephen Rennicks the composer, and Ed Guiney the producer were all in film school together. 20 years ago? And they've been making films ever since. And those three are just huge collaborators, and they're really talented all together.
Yeah.
So it's really the people you meet on these courses too that are definitely worth attaching yourselves to in some capacity.
Yeah.
Like a director to an editor, or a screenwriter to a producer, or it's a really good mix of getting groups together.
And then in terms of when for the other kind of half of the people here that are in college students now, what kind of portfolios should they be preparing, or kind of what kind of approach for getting a job or getting into the industry?
I think interns are brilliant. I think it's just, and I think companies are very inundated now. Because, their brother used to be an accountant, but now he wants to be in film, so there's just like everybody, it's a lot busier. But I think some of the courses, if the courses could run placements or set them up or have contacts or do something, I just think that's really invaluable, because a lot of interns are kept on. They do it a lot with the foreign people, and there's foreign companies that give you an intern from Spain for 3 months. And, they're usually really well educated, eager, passionate. If you can show all that, you have a chance. Or even contacts in the company that someone knows someone who's going on a shoot. Okay, it's a short and you won't get paid. So you might do 4 shorts for total free, live in your mum's house. And then someone on the 4th short is going to be doing something proper with money. And you were great, and you had a great eye, and you turned up, and you were really... People it's all about personality as well in film, isn't it? Yeah. And people kind of socialise at such long hours, so they spend a lot of time together. So at the end of the 4th or 5th short, somebody somewhere will bring you onto something that's paid. So there is a bit of free work involved. But I don't think people take advantage.
And do you think our companies, you mentioned in your talk, small companies are very open to people. So are you open to kind of just getting an email in from someone that just wants to come and
definitely send us an email when you're ready to go. We usually get a few, and we meet and we take on, or if we're in the middle of production, we'll take on interns, and they can, all of you absolutely are welcome to send an email. I mean, I'm not sure we could take all of you. Maybe we could just do a film just for interns. The company name is Park Films, and there's a website, so do get in touch.
I'm going to tell you about a website after this that I know Chloe knows, but I've put details of the speakers on the Facebook page, and we'll put the details out there again. I'm going to tell you about this in a minute, but you'll have to go like the Facebook page so you find out who they are.
There's also, just on the internet, there's also a website called Screen Producers Ireland, and every production company in Ireland is is part of that group. So there's an A to Z list of every single production company that exists, and all their details and all their email addresses. So I mean, you could just plough through that and send every single one of them a really nice, breezy, friendly, short email to offer your services, and just explain how amazing and hardworking and willing you are, and just see if any one of them bite. So maybe that's the way to do it.
In terms of college and interning, if you're not sure what area you'd like to go in terms of where you want to end up, if you want to end up in fiction or factual, then I'd say going like on a general media production course would be good. But if you do want to specialize and you know in advance that, if some people know from very early on what area they want to specialize in, I think you should be aware of what the college is teaching, because if you want to move into factual or news, you should be moving towards more broadcast journalism courses and things like that. If you want to do fiction, IADT, for example, is really well known for fiction filmmakers. And then the same goes for if you want to intern and stuff on a production company or for a filmmaker. If you want to work in TV, look at the credits. Just start reading the credits at the end of TV programs and see what production companies have done stuff. See the directors' names. And when you write to the company, tell them that you saw which program you like of theirs and why you liked it, and that this is the area you want to go into. So you're actually targeting who you want to work for, and it's gonna benefit your learning. So, for example, if you want to work in factual, go to production companies that specialize in documentary and news production and current affairs, and you can learn on the job in an area that you're passionate about. It just makes it, you're gonna skip a few rungs of the ladder because you're already in the area that you want to work, that you hope to work for in the future, in the future, and you're meeting the people that you'll need to know to get you those jobs in the future. So filmmaking is really all about who you know and contacts that you meet along the way. And that's why I was saying on set, if you get a chance to help people out, get there early, have a smile on your face, because it's a long day and sometimes things can get stressful. But if you've got if you've got a positive, friendly, can-do attitude, people will remember you and you'll be asked back.
Yeah. In terms of the bigger companies, Phil, do you know would Brown Bag, for example, take on interns or anything like that?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, intern is a very broad term. I'm not sure that there's work experience people there all the time. Okay. Every single week there's a different, for a week or 2 weeks, every single week. I sit down with someone every week to take them through what I do. So
would they be college students? Or
it varies. I mean, anything from sort of transition year students all the way up to first, second year Ballyfermot or IADT. They're brilliant. So yeah, absolutely drop if that's your cup of tea, drop Brown Bag a line, because they're brilliant at taking people in.
And also,
Anne-Marie, I started my career as an intern. That's how I in this web design course I did out in Sallynoggin, which I did sort of under duress. It just wasn't cool to be gone to Sallynoggin Senior Tech when I was 20. Do you know what I mean? But it was brilliant in retrospect. But as part of the course, we had to do 2 weeks in one place and 2 weeks in another. We had to do a total of 4 weeks, and my second 2 weeks was in Segasoft, and I never left. So that's the type of thing that can happen. Absolutely great advice. Just get out there and get stuck in. There's no substitute for practical experience. None.
And also, if you're interested in editing, the big post houses like Windmill Lane or Screen Scene, they every time you go in, an intern makes you a cup of tea. I don't know if you've noticed, and they're all from colleges. So it's good to, if you have an editing, it's definitely good to go for. I mean, Windmill Lane would be the biggest. And anybody as well, always talk to your auntie or your granny or your fifth cousin who knows who somewhere, and you'll find somebody who knows somebody somewhere, and you just hound them until they ring that person, and that person hounds somebody else, and you get where you get into that particular company or wherever it is, and that definitely works.
Any questions on the floor? Yep.
It's about animation. If you've let's say I've got a script and I've got the distribution, but I want to get production up. Where would I start from there?
There's a load. I mean, there are a load, as you're probably aware. There's a load of animation companies in Dublin, in Ireland in general. I mean, it's just an absolutely booming industry. So, I mean, find who's in charge of development. In Brown Bag, it's Jenny Stacey. And drop her a mail and just say, look, I have a script. I'd love to come in and have a chat. And depends. I mean, they'll obviously read the script. They'll vet it. If they like it, they'll meet you.
Unsolicited though?
I mean, I got in touch with them unsolicited. I sent them the Wood Dragon stuff, and out of the blue. And so why not take a punt? But you're looking for the head of development. There's always somebody in these companies who are looking, who have their eye out for new content and new IP. So I hope that helps.
Good, yeah.
Someone down the back.
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you get, if you know about applications for internships, is there any bias towards people that have a certain background, or is it open to people just willing to try something new?
I don't think there's any what do you mean bias?
So I'm doing creative digital media and talent, and it's not, specific on any course. It's very broad, and if I was to try an animation internship or editing or something along the lines of that, would be, determined on my degree, or would be down
No,
to,
I think everyone knows an intern can absolutely be totally green.
Yeah.
A trainee on a film has to be experienced. But an intern, no, I think you can have worked in Woodies and it wouldn't matter. Passion, drive, turn up on time, smile in your face. As Avian said, all those I think are more important.
The very fact that you're getting in touch to apply for an internship implies your interest. So,
And again, back to contacts. Like if you do know someone somewhere, definitely use that contact, because you'll skip the intern list a lot higher. Because it is all about, that fella down the road who I know and I grew up with, I'll definitely get his son in. And people do go out of their way to jam people in that they know. So try use contacts ahead of cold calling and emailing, because that can be quite time consuming. And it's not great for the confidence either if you don't get responses.
Exactly. And on that note, guys, honestly, it's a culture in this industry that you will be ignored, and never take it personally.
Yeah,
Never
don't.
ever take it personally. When I was going through my 2 years freelance doing advertising work, I swear to God, I would email art directors with, my latest work. And I found out subsequently that it's kind of a thing that art directors don't respond to you. And I'm telling you, like, I would gnash my teeth in fury, because I just wouldn't not respond to an email. I just think it's the height of ignorance. I respond to every email I get. And I found that really difficult, but it's a thing. It just is. It's a symptom of an industry, and it's also people who get 500 emails a day. So don't get discouraged by that. Don't take it personally.
The egos are bigger in advertising though, aren't they?
Yeah, oh my God.
So they respond less.
Yeah.
Anybody else? One more question here. What kind of things inspire your images or animations you come up with? Again.
My own stuff. Well, to be honest with you, to get a bit all sort of Enid Blyton, I just grew up reading sort of Faraway Tree, Enchanted Wood, all that kind of stuff, Lord of the Rings, all that kind of fantasy and science fiction, and it's just totally informed sort of what I want to do, what I write, and the type of imagery I create is all sort of informed by that. And I now have the pleasure of filling my daughter's heads with absolute nonsense as well, which is brilliant. It's great, sort of sending it back down. But that's it. It's just a kind of lifetime of, for me, what I try to capture in my images is wonder, is a sense of wonder. I don't think you have to lose that as you get older. I don't think you have to lose that sense of childhood wonder. I didn't. I'm 37. I still think the world is awesome. So.
Is there any kind of blogs or websites or magazines or anything like that in any of the industries that you think students either at school level or college level should be kind of keenly looking at?
There's so many. In factual programming, you see, something that's amazing at the moment is this change in technology that's happening. So you can never kind of sit still in terms of your learning, because a new camera is going to come out and new kind of editing software or new add-ons. So I think you can constantly keep learning. And the internet's amazingly helpful for blogs and feedback on software. If you're trying out software and you're not sure on something, you can always research it and get answers without having to read the huge, massive manual, So, I think it just depends on what software you're using. You guys.
From a sort of digital art perspective, CG Society. .org, CG Society, all one word, .org is pretty amazing. Concept Art, all one word, .org. That's all I can think of. Just at this, there's tons. There's absolutely tons. But tutorials, YouTube videos. If you want to go and learn Photoshop, go onto YouTube and YouTube Photoshop tutorials, and you'll get 50,000 results. So honestly, the internet is your friend.
And what kind of, projects are in your spare time? Like, I get the impression that you're all very keen on what you do, so you're always working on it. And Phil, you started, dabbling in Photoshop. So to school students or college students, do you have any advice of, how to go about, sometimes it's hard to motivate yourself to work on a project. Do you have any pieces of advice?
To kind of what you could do in your spare time.
Yeah, to inspire you or get you kind of...
Well, for making films, I think watching movies and, if you enjoyed it at the end, why did you enjoy it? Why did it work? How did they set up the story? How great were the characters? Who drove the movie? Whose story was it? Like, who owned that film? And, after watching a lot of movies, you get a real good sense of how movies work. And then even a bad movie that you hated, why did you hate it? Why did it fail? Why did it not engage the audience? Why was it not compelling or dramatic? So you could just, it's a great pastime to go to the cinema and just, as part of your homework, and sit with a big box of popcorn and watch a movie. And, even go with a really trusty friend or have a partner and just totally discuss it over ice cream after or whatever is handy. And yeah, that really gets your brain working. And then if you do, get into the industry, at least you know how it works.
It's for me. It's about, as I say, it's the age of content. There's so much out there that you can immerse yourself in. I'm Anne-Marie, like Anne-Marie. I'm a dedicated cinephile of 750 movies at home. I'm an absolute diehard cinephile, and cinema sort of has really informed what I do as well as books, as well as music. It's really just immersing yourself in all this wonderful media that's out there. It's all there. It's available, and if you want to go into the visual medium, obviously you want to be drawing and painting and learning Photoshop and 3D and stuff like that, and just doing your own little projects. Easier said than done, but if you can find the time, then certainly, yeah.
Yeah, and I would say beyond just watching the films and analysing them, and something that gets lost with downloading movies is you lose what you get on the DVD, which is the director talking over, when, what is it called?
Commentary.
Yeah, the commentary. So if you're really interested in film and you want to know how it's done, listen to the commentaries on the DVDs, because you get such insight into how they came up with the idea, how they got funding, and you see the struggle that people have gone through to get this product finished. And then just in terms of camera work, if you don't have access to a video camera, most people have access to a stills camera. If you want to get into camera work, you've got to get your eye to be really sharp. So you really need to be taking a lot of photos. And in terms of photos, instead of just thinking, carrying your camera with you everywhere you go and thinking you might take a photo, you should maybe try and set yourself a target per week. That's what I did when I was learning photography. So in those days, I was shooting on film. So I did a 36 spool a week, and I try and change the what I was shooting, the objects and it just really helped me, because I knew by the end of the week if I hadn't met my target, when I was going to get the stuff printed. So just try and be taking a lot of photos and keep your eye trained towards visuals if you want to get into camera work.
Any last questions from the floor?
Sorry, one last thing. If it's documentary you're interested in, like Evelyn's forte, get yourself maybe a documentary channel in the house, like Discovery or something, and just make sure they're accessible, because you wouldn't see that many in cinemas.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're all international as well, which are good to look at.
There was one last question over there, I think.
Just wondering if you have any thoughts about funded or Kickstarter for funding films or projects?
Yeah, it really works. It's great. A lot of low budget people are using them. Yeah, it's fantastic. Probably, I think, for feature films, use the Indiegogos or the ones outside Ireland, because you have a much wider net. Whereas funded, you can probably only raise, and I could be wrong, there's probably bigger ones on there, but I think you can only, I think it's 10 or 20 might be the max, 20 grand, whereas it's Indiegogo, you can go a bit higher. But it's fantastic. There's a huge amount of work in it, with just the everyday and the daily updates and the. But yeah, I have done I haven't actually. I have done it for something small that somebody else did that I just helped them with, but I haven't done it for a feature. We're hoping just to get it the traditional way. But it's an awful lot of work. You nearly need to hire somebody to manage it for the 30 days. Maybe an intern.
Thanks to the speakers. I'm just going to briefly give you some information about a website, and then Tori's going to come up as well. So first of all, next week, next Monday evening, we have our next event, the Art of Sound and Gaming. So just we've one industry speaker who's an artist, and then one industry speaker who works in sound and gaming. So just to give you an idea of the different types of careers in video games, the more kind of creative aspects. And then the next thing I want to tell you about is a website called YAM. So besides the badges on your chairs, has anybody heard about this website? Oh, 2, 3. So basically, YAM is your arts map, and I'm going to show you video, which is the best way to explain it.
It's a great map-based arts and cultural events listing site for young people in Dublin. YAM features many different categories, including arts, crafts, dance, music, film, photography, and loads of others. Using the site is really simple. Find events on the map, browse the listings, or submit your own. Every event has its own detailed page that lets you know what's happening and features a map, photos, directions, and ticketing information. YAM is great on phones and tablets too, so you can find great events on the go. You can even use the YAM widget to easily share your events on your blog or website, and there's also a Facebook app to allow you to share your events to your timeline. So next time you want to see what's on in your area, or you want to let the world know where your creativity is on show, you know exactly where to go. Sign up today and never miss another creative event in Dublin again. YAM.ie, your arts map.
So YAM.ie is a website by, as you can see there with the logos, Dublin City Council, but also South Dublin County Council here, Noise, some of you might be familiar with, and Temple Bar Cultural Trust and the National Youth Council of Ireland. It's literally Google Maps, a big map, and you can get on there, you can search for events, but not only that, you can submit your own events. So this map is what you make of it. You can get your own events on there. It's for 13 to 25-year-olds, but there's events listed there for all ages. And just, you know, do submit if you've got any sort of events coming up. We have a Facebook page and a Twitter page, and we're always sharing events there. So it's a good way to get your events out there and get more people coming along. And it's just really great. And if you want to find out more about these speakers here, their information is on the Facebook page, and we'll share that again so that you can find out the names of their companies. But do go on to Facebook, like it, follow on Twitter, and sign up.